Gather round, heroes, and join me for an in-depth look into the secrets of Demeo. As most of you know by now, the Hydra is not the boss. It's more of a decoy, really, or a punishment for players who don't listen to the DM. But it's not without its own dangers, so let's cover that first.
Amazing and terrifying mythological monster, the fearful Hydra of the gates of the Inferno. The first creation of its kind, of such great dimensions and accuracy of movement.
All you have to do is keep out of sight to be safe from the Hydra. Doors are the problem, and you become vulnerable running across a lane to open up an adjacent building. You might be able to stay safe with one more thing: Focus Potion, Banish, Pit Fighter's Leap, Grappling Hook, and Guiding Light. Anything that'll get you to it or open the door for you. Sneak's good too. It makes you a non-target, and you can still open doors for everybody else. Or you can give the Hydra something else to worry about. Stun it with a ranged attack on the Hydra's tail. The stun status only lasts for one turn, but the tail disappears for 2 turns, meaning you can only keep the Hydra under control this way every other turn. If you're just running from one corner of the arena to another, that's really all you need. The damage isn't important. Even a poison bomb or a water flask will stun it, and the latter costs 0 AP to use. A bottle of lye is even better. It does take a roll to hit, but the poison status means you'll automatically stun the Hydra when the tail reappears in 2 turns. Don't bother killing the tail, you'll be doing it a favor. If you're ignoring the Hydra, try using Astral Barrier. It bounces back both Serpent's Blast and Ophidian Flare, though the Hydra only takes half damage from its own attacks, and it doesn't last long considering all the running around you'll have to do. There are other ways to deal with the Hydra, and these become important when you engage the boss in the final battle. Allure can distract all of the heads, and they only hit half the time, so you can count on its protection for about 3 turns. Or if you're fighting Umbal as well, it will last long enough to absorb all of their damage for 1 turn. Try it with an Astral Barrier. You can also take out the heads individually. Killing them is possible, but time-consuming, and the Hunter's Mark is well utilized here. Killing them all will result in animation that reveals the location of the yellow eye tiles, and then spawns more Hydra heads to take their place, and this time they're Berserk, attacking twice and doing +1 damage. If you're in stage 2 of the fight, Umbal will not call in the Hydra again. Killing just 1 or 2 of them can make the encounter easier. They can also be handled individually with Stun, Blind, Corruption, and Charm. Stunned and Blinded only last 1 turn, but the Warlock's Guiding Light can still be effective. It's not difficult to find all 3 points of interest while hunting for the yellow eye tiles. After that, the lights remain stationary, blinding everything in a 5x5 area for 5 turns. Blinded Hydras don't move, so they can't escape until the duration ends. If you can't blind all of them, the rest will eventually move into the Guiding Line's area of effect and be caught.
Now, what will the fiends do?
Corruption causes them to lose their attacks for 3 turns. You need to get them to corrupt themselves with Ophidian Flare by placing a target right next to them. Since they prefer close targets, it's pretty easy to make one take itself out. Charm also lasts for 3 turns. Look for heads that are 2 or 3 spaces from each other, and charm the head that moves first, if you're keeping track of that sort of thing. It will use Ophidian Flare on the other for a guaranteed hit with Corruption, and that's another Hydra that can't attack you for 3 turns. Everyone else is using their typical attacks to kill the Hydra. Watch out for counterattack damage from attacking its spiny back, and careful you aren't using cards that you should be keeping for High Priest Umbal. These are boss-like enemies with the usual resistances to Coin Flip and Consuming Vortex, so these cards can be recycled after the regular monsters are consumed. Better yet, use them on Rift Servants, not just because they look like first-gen AI art, but because they will teleport you around and cause countless delays.
Let's go.
And be careful about that corruption. Keep an eye out for rows of red tiles. If they extend into the fog of war, assume the corruption continues. Worse than that, there's a problem with the upper levels of the map, which causes the corruption tiles to appear slightly beneath the floor, totally invisible unless you stick your face under the floor. The Beast Army is going to be a liability in this book. All that corruption is going to get them eventually, and if you have Call Companion, use it without a bone, so she will draw fire away from the party and dies before she can bite you in the backside. Regrettably, Kana is in the same boat, and unless you are issuing commands to keep her busy, she will use an action every turn to attack the Hydra, and probably end up corrupted. Unless you've neutralized the Hydra somehow, be prepared to have Kana unavailable up to 50% of the time.
Hey, quite a mess.
During the first half of the fight, High Priest Umbal will be walking around invisibly. Resolution keeps making it harder and harder to kill him in this state, so I'll start here with the strategy they want you to use. Make him visible by positioning each hero on the 4 yellow eye tiles found randomly throughout the map. They can be very good at hiding, so keep looking around in all the nooks and crannies. Once a hero has them in their line of sight, they'll be revealed at all times. You're not alone in this task. The Spirit of Ralma assists at the end of each monster move by appearing at the center of the board and pointing in the direction of one of the yellow-eyed tiles. In a 4-player game, at least one hero should be prepared with a way to get to a distant or difficult tile. Teleport, Portal of Gnaws, and Grappling Hook are good for this. You may need to clear corruption slivers and other things off of these tiles. And despite what you may have heard from random people on the internet, do not put anything on top of these tiles. Once they are all mounted, High Priest Umbal appears, and the second stage of the battle begins. You might just stumble upon him by accident in the first stage of the battle. Occupational hazard of walking around invisibly. Take these opportunities as they arise, and remember the Guardian's knockback may shift his position. Sometimes it's fun to track him while he's invisible. If you're playing with a bard and want to keep everyone together, this is really the only option. First, listen for his laughter. It happens at the end of every monster move, so be ready for it.
What should I do?
Sometimes it's very faint, almost unhearable. I find it helpful to zoom into the board and move my head around to triangulate the origin. Move towards his location, avoiding or dispatching other enemies as best you can. It takes a few turns to get within range. Refine your estimate at the end of each turn. Remember he moves 4 spaces each turn. 2 times 2 action points, not 3 times 2 like his stats indicate. Second, narrow down his exact location. In the Mechanics Masterclass, I mentioned a few ways that all heroes can use the rangefinder to locate his position. Regrettably, the March 2024 patch took away the ability to find him just at the edge of your rangefinder, but the other ways still work. So, look for tight corridors that aren't giving you your full movement, places that you can't move to in the fog of war even though there's nothing there, and spaces you can't attack things from. That last one takes time and only works when Umbal is standing next to something that you can attack. If you've narrowed down his location to a 3x3 area, but want to be sure, try dropping a lamp in the middle and seeing if you can attack the lamp from every space around it. If there's one space you can't attack from, that's your invisible boss.
Help! At last.
Astral Marked status affects this boss, and whether he's invisible or surrounded by decoys, Kana will have no trouble whatsoever finding him while hunting. This is only good for one attack, but it's something. Maybe she's trying to make up for being such a bad kitty, running off and attacking the Hydra. Some heroes have class cards that will let you infer his location. Any card that can be used as an enemy detector works. The Guardian's Warcry, and the Barbarian's Howl of the Ancients, and Vargav's Retribution. You don't play the card, you just hold it over the board to see if you can play the card in an area with no monsters. And if it allows you to play it, then you've got an unseen enemy in that space. You should be able to figure out his exact spot with this, with some luck. Magic Barrier also lets you do this, but worse. The wings of the wall to the left and right won't appear if the space is occupied by an invisible villain. Grappling Hook and Talix Hook Strike are the best tools for this job. you'll be able to find your target in the one empty spot that doesn't let you grapple right to it. Whenever he's damaged, the High Priest will appear briefly during monster move and then relocate where the hunt begins again.
It's the monster's turn.
When he's dropped to half hit points, he goes berserk and automatically triggers the next stage of the fight. If you have any difficulty covering the yellow eye tiles, this is how you progress. He's not done with his tricks. Spawn Doppelganger destroys all monsters in sight and creates 6 clones, or 7 when berserk. He can maintain a maximum of 9 clones, or 12 when berserk, not including the real High Priest himself. Only the real one will spit out copies, and sometimes the Spirit of Ralma will appear to point him out. You need to keep track of the real one. I just keep one hand resting while pointed at him, and zoom out to track him with my eyes when he does the Doppelganger shuffle. If you find that hard, try keeping one hand on him, drawing a mark where he is, and then follow the mark you're drawing. If you lose track of him, you'll need to find him again. The slow ways are to wait for him to spit out more clones, Ralma pointing him out, or interacting with environmental tiles. Water and corruption tiles will always disappear when he lands on them, but the clones will only become wet, or wet clones only dry out, if the real Umbal has stepped in it. It also doesn't make it any easier when different players see the bosses in different locations, a common glitch on this level. Mass clone murder is the fastest way to reacquire. Since the clones vanish when any attack hits them, you want a large area of effect. Vortex and Vortex lamps are the best, and will take out most, if not all, of those pesky doubles. You can't target the gaps in the map, so it might not go as smoothly as you want it to. Keep multiple options on hand, and 0 AP cards like Water Flask are exceptional for this job. Even if you haven't lost sight of the true High Priest, it's a good idea to keep his number of clones to a minimum, since his damage is multiplied by the number of High Priests. By himself, he's only doing 2 damage. With an additional 9 clones, that mushrooms to 20 damage. While Berserk, his damage cap is as high as 39 damage. Artillery is quickly destroyed, but can still be helpful in the second half of the fight. Each piece can be relied on to move 1 or 2 of the clones. Friendlies can help you out, or harm you. Try to summon them where they won't be easily corrupted. The problem with pruning clones is that he just makes more of them before he attacks. So even if you eliminate them all, you're still going to take 14 damage or more when he's berserk. The only way to stop this is to eliminate the clones between the Doppelganger Shuffle and the attack. There is a moment where all of the clones land before taking flight again, and if you can cause damage at this point, the clones will be destroyed and the damage reduced. I've only really found that slime tiles and a well-placed booby trap can accomplish this. Reaching him in the second stage is not much easier. He relocates to a new spot around the middle of the board every turn, and the trenches in the map where the Hydra emerges from are not like normal pits and do not allow you to charge over them.
I will fell you all.
On top of that, the clones will get in your way on those narrow platforms, so you'll want ranged attacks, or you risk not being able to attack him at all some turns.
Wounds are healed.
Both get what we want. Fine with me, pal. Fine with me too. Fine. Okay. All right.
Killing him is moderately difficult. Courage Shanty is very hard to keep up on this level, between the yellow eye tiles, keeping out of sight, and Umbal moving all over the place. That puts the Bard at a disadvantage. I hope you've been feeding him swiftness potions. The Hunter does her basic damage. The Guardian has some decent cards to do some collateral damage to the clones at the same time. Curse Dagger and Blink are good for reaching him, but you'll find his back is frequently inaccessible. In that case, you might just want to stealth and stay out of sight for a turn, and try a death blow on him next turn. Oana's abilities are also impeded by all the other targets on the board, and Kana's tendency to run off to play with the Hydra.
As they hone in, just accept your fate.
The sorcerer shines, as usual, with Fireball. Barrier of Fury, however, is very hard to use with all of those pits, and doesn't even drain half his hit points. Grappling Hook and Talix Hook Strike are excellent for reaching him wherever he may be. Clones will take all of your hard-earned Varga if you hit one by accident, but they also let you draw Varga from him with Varga's Retribution to deliver excellent damage to the right target. Surviving the High Priest is moderately difficult. It's nearly impossible to keep him from attacking you while berserk, so plan for a long battle. Keep some good defensive cards for the end of the battle, when his damage output gets crazy. He will always start attacking with Focus Fire, on the turn after he multiplies. The clones move in a fast circle, and he will deliver a single massive attack. On the next turn, he uses Salvo Corrupto. The clones move in a slow square, spreading their damage around to every target in sight, with multiple smaller attacks. Then back to Focus Fire, and he continues to alternate. Both attacks do 2 damage plus 2 per clone. His Berserk plus 1 damage applies to each attack, so Salvo Corrupto can end up with plus 13 damage total, while Focus Fire is just plus 1. The Spirit of Realma will continue to help out. She usually appears on the first turn to show you which is the real High Priest Umbal, and pops up again occasionally every 4 turns or so. He also has Squeeze, which he rarely pulls out. He must be low on clones and see a large number of targets to use it. The attack rubs visible enemies together for 3 damage and puts them down in a new location. Replenish Armor can help. A bit. Not so much when he goes berserk, so I hope you have an Adamant Potion. Songs of Recovery and Resilience can be good combined with a Lure or Guardian, as can Magic Shield. They're not super, though. Booby Trap I've mentioned, and is actually a good defensive tool for this fight. Deploy these while stealthed, so that Umbal lands on them during his turn. You might do 5 damage to the High Priest, but even if you only take out clones, that's a reduction of 2 or 3 points of damage each when he attacks. A Lure doesn't last more than a turn without help. Add an Astral Barrier, and it grounds attacks for 3 turns. Maybe. Both Lure and Astral Barrier are only partially effective against Umbal, whose attacks can override the expected target and instead go after a random target in sight. The point is, Lure might be ignored, and Astral Barrier might just switch Focus Fire or bounce Salvo Corrupto to a different hero, having no net effect. Weakness works a treat in this fight, especially Howl of the Ancients. His maximum 39 damage melts away to 13 for 2 turns. Just make sure you're targeting the right one. Overall, the Barbarian is the most versatile champion against the High Priest, but even he doesn't have all the tools for all the challenges you'll find in this boss battle. A mixed group is great, and adding Warlock, Hunter, or Sorcerer will make things easier. Klypto definitely has some cards that will help everyone. Well, would you look at the time? I think we're going to have to skip the boss battle playthrough on this one. I hope you've seen enough in the clips that I've shown so far. Thanks for checking out another masterclass. After defeating Rakarn, it's not time to sit on your laurels. We have one more fight for the fate of the world. No pressure. If you learned anything here, give us a like. This has been my Why. I'll see you in Helmar.